In 1914, Shell arrived in the Philippines. It's been a century of wars, political strife,
placing the entire Philippines under martial law,
and mega storms.
I asked the support from the police and the military to secure this site.
But 100 years on, Shell has become one of the world's largest companies. And the Philippines, one of the most exciting and dynamic nations in Asia. Today, the Philippines is booming. With 98 million people, it is one of Asia's fastest growing economies. And by 2050, predicted to be the world's 14th largest. But when Shell first arrived, it was a very different time. An English businessman, Marcus Samuel, began by selling kerosene in the country. He built tankers that carried fuel from the west to ports in the east, and started naming the fleet after his father's seashell collection. A tradition that the company still carries on today.
Most of your kerosene dealers were also at the same time dealers in rice, in salt, in all sorts of commodities. So they were not exclusively petroleum dealers. And that's how the business has been in the past. The oil industry has been an indispensable part of any kind of progress. Without oil or without gas, you can't power the factories, you can't move people in cars or in trains or whatever.
Cesar Buenaventura joined Shell in 1958, straight out of university.
In the early 50s, the Shell Group embarked on a policy of bringing up locals to responsible positions in the company. They made very conscious effort to recruit what they would like to think of as the best and the brightest.
He went on to become the first Filipino chief executive officer of Shell and was eventually awarded an OBE for his distinguished service.
It's one of the highlights of my career.
When Cesar was just a child, the Second World War broke out. The Japanese bombed towns across the Philippines. Shell had a critical role, supplying fuel to the Allied forces.
Medical Corps troops, patrol and finance building.
Before the war, we were almost completely agriculture. There was hardly any manufacturing in the Philippines. So immediately after the war, when there were opportunities to start building up manufacturing facilities, Shell, in a company of Filipino shareholders, built our own refinery in the early 60s.
The country became less reliant on imports for its energy. But with the 70s came political upheaval that resonated worldwide.
I signed Proclamation number 1081, placing the entire Philippines under martial law.
The President, Ferdinand Marcos, presided over a long era of civil unrest. Profits for the oil industry plummeted, and many of the oil giants pulled out.
I think Shell stayed because they felt that even under those conditions, there was a way by which you could be part of progress in the Philippines. There was potential, there was a promise in the Philippines of a future, and that even this dictatorship and martial law will pass.
It took 20 years, but it did pass, bringing new opportunities for the country and the companies that had remained. In 2001, Shell developed Malampaya, its biggest project.
I always felt that there was petroleum somewhere in the Philippines. If you look at Malampaya, it's a major discovery. It wasn't an easy field to develop because it was in 1,000 meters of water.
Today, Malampaya provides no less than a third of the country's total energy demand, so crucial that the capital, Manila, would be in darkness without it. Over recent decades, however, as the Philippines' population has exploded, the gap between the rich and poor has grown. Nearly 22 million people now live below the poverty line. And slums in major cities are increasingly common.
Nation building is a 24-hour, 7-day effort that has to be done by everyone. Of course, you don't get out of poverty unless you are trained or you're educated.
An organization called Gawad Kalinga, meaning to give care, is facing this challenge head-on.
30% of the people here used to be drug dealers, users, and also involved in some crime. This is the Shell Training Center. Shell is seen that they go beyond corporate social responsibility. They're actually investing in helping us build the future market. Shell shares also the resources to build 250 homes in the first 2 Shell villages and make the poor not just victims, but productive citizens.
Its mission is to end poverty for 5 million families by 2024. Gawad Kalinga is just one of many Shell social enterprises in the Philippines.
Oh, si Rodel, pero si David wala.
Another is the Pilipinas Shell Foundation, whose biggest success story is the fight against malaria.
When we started the Malampaya development in Palawan, we were in a place where there was a lot of malaria mosquitoes. So we said, well, why don't we look at helping the population kind of get out of this? So we started a program called Movement Against Malaria.
When the program started, there were only 3 doctors in the whole province. They trained villagers to use microscopes and identify infected blood.
Nag-umpisa tayo, 59,000. Confirmed case findings. At ngayon, 8,000 na lang tayo.
The program was so successful, it was extended across 4 more provinces, eradicating malaria in thousands of households and saving untold lives. Being part of the community also means wading in when things go wrong.
Una-una po, nagpapasalamat po kami, ma'am, kasi kahit papano po may mga pagkain po na.
And in this, the centenary year, as a mark of recognition, the Philippine government has honored Shell's contribution to the country by including its famed pectin on a special edition banknote. To show gratitude to Manila and the Philippines, the Shell-Ecomarathon was staged for the first time to celebrate the first 100 years. More than 100 student teams from 15 countries took on the challenge to see who could go the furthest on the least amount of fuel.
This car was inspired by World War II planes. We like to go with wood because it's different from the other competitors.
The ultimate energy efficiency competition brought together the smartest young minds in Asia.
Winner is from Philippines!
When I see all of you here, I see that you are truly the hope of not only your respective countries, but the hope of our world for the future.